We've all been there, right? You wrap up a huge project, you're totally drained, but also relieved, and you feel like it was a success. But how do you know for sure? Today, we're going to walk through a way to answer that question, not with gut feelings, but with actual data.
This right here, this is the question. It's at the absolute heart of every single thing we do. Every project, every decision, every dollar we spend. And today, we're going to figure out how to answer it, so we can finally take the guesswork out of what success really looks like.
So here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll talk about just framing the question. Then, we'll get into the weeds of counting what we actually spent. After that, we'll connect those costs to the real impact. And finally, we'll see how to use all this to get way smarter for next time.
Okay, let's dive into section 1. Was it all worth it? This is all about setting the stage. And what's great about this whole approach is that it works for anything, whether you're launching a massive new product or just organizing a small team off-site. You know, the whole point here is to get past that vague, yeah, I think it went pretty well feeling. We want to get to a place where we can say, I know it went well, and here are the numbers to prove it. It's about swapping intuition for actual evidence, which helps us see if we were efficient and, you guessed it, make much better calls in the future.
All right, on to section 2. Here we're counting the 3 inputs. See, before we can even talk about the results, we have to get really honest about what we poured into the project. And it basically boils down to 3 main things.
First up, the most obvious one, cash, the financial resources. This is every single dollar, peso, or yen you spent. We're talking the big-ticket items like development and marketing, but also all the little things that add up, like new software licenses or training sessions. If you wrote a check for it, it counts.
And this is where things get interesting, where you see the plan versus the reality. Look at product development. We budgeted $100,000, but ended up spending $120,000. But hey, look at marketing. We actually came in under budget. That column on the right, the variance, that's where the real story begins to tell itself. And boom, here's a perfect example. A single number, like plus 20%, just jumps off the page. It immediately makes you ask why. What happened there? What caused that big of an overspend? This is the first clue we need to follow.
Okay, next input. And I'd argue this one is the most precious of all, your people. Human resources isn't just a department, it's the total sum of every single hour of brain power, creativity, and sheer effort your team invested. And honestly, it's almost always the biggest and most underestimated cost. So you might be asking, how in the world do you measure that? Well, you start by counting the hours. In this case, you can see the product team put in a staggering number of hours, which translates to a huge cost. Laying it out like this really shows you where the human energy was focused. And let's just pause on that number, 3,200 hours. To put that in perspective, that's like having 1.5 people working nonstop, full-time, for an entire year on this one thing. This isn't just some abstract number, it's a massive, massive chunk of your team's most limited resource, their time.
And that flows perfectly into our third and final input, time itself. Think about your project's timeline not just as a calendar, but as another type of budget. Every single week you're delayed, you're not just pushing a deadline, you're spending more money, you're burning more team hours. It's a real cost.
A simple timeline like this makes it painfully obvious. We thought development would take 6 months. It actually took 10. That 4-month slip isn't just a whoops. It has a direct ripple effect, causing the budget overruns and the extra thousands of hours we just looked at.
All right, section 3. We've added up all our inputs. We know what we spent. Now for the fun part. It's time to connect all that cost to the results. This is where we figure out the true impact and find out what our return on investment actually was.
So the trick here is to use simple, powerful numbers. Look at the ROI, the return on investment. We were aiming for 25%, but we landed at 15%. Or check out the budget deviation. We wanted to be under 10%, but we blew past it by 18%. These things, they're called KPIs, or Key Performance Indicators. They basically translate all that messy data into a simple score. How'd we do?
But hold on, the analysis isn't quite done. We also need to think about what we didn't do. Every time we choose to do one project, we are, by default, choosing not to do something else. So for every awesome new feature we built, there was maybe a critical server upgrade that got pushed to the side.
And this idea has a name, opportunity cost. It is without a doubt one of the most powerful concepts in business, and it's so often ignored.
It's the cost of the road not taken. It forces you to ask that tough question. Was this really the best possible use of our team's 3,200 hours and all that extra cash?
Which brings us right to our final section, learning for next time. Because the real magic of doing all this work isn't about pointing fingers about what went wrong, it's about gathering intel so you can absolutely crush it on the next project.
This is where you get your team in a room and you have the really honest conversation. You ask the hard questions. So, did that extra 20% we spent on development actually give us a better product? Or did we waste it? Were our best people working on the most important parts? This is where the real growth happens.
And out of those conversations, you build a real action plan. Based on what we saw, maybe next time we need to fund marketing and R&D a bit differently. We definitely need a tighter grip on our development timelines. And most importantly, we need to start talking about opportunity costs on day one of a project, not after it's already finished. This is how you improve. This is how you win.
So we end up right back where we started, with this one simple, incredibly powerful question. And it's not just for CEOs or project managers, it's for anyone who invests their time, their money, or their energy into making something happen. Keep asking yourself this question, and you'll make sure that what you're working on is always what truly matters most.